Hello and welcome once again, everybody, to another episode of Major League Fantasy Football Weekly. I'm your host, Lou Landers, coming to you from the Major League Fantasy Sports YouTube channel. With me today, as always, my co-host and the mad dog, Ron McCleese. Ron, what's cooking?
Oh, I'm excited, and we got training camps coming up here at the end of July. Football, it's in full swing, and the rookies are going to be, and veterans are going to be reporting to camp, and everything's going to start trickling down. And I'm really excited about what the future holds here. And fantasy football is just one day closer.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. I'm so excited. Baseball season's in full swing, but my favorite time of the year, September, October, when both those sports are going, it's the greatest time. Matt Barkman is joining us here today. He's a football writer for Major League Fantasy Sports, and his article, Off the Mat, comes out every Sunday morning. Matt, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you doing?
Hey, doing great. Was doing better yesterday. I was on the beach laying out, but talking about fantasy football isn't a bad replacement.
Yeah, I mean, the beach is pretty good. It'd be great if you could combine the two, some beach and some fantasy football all at once. Maybe one week we will broadcast from the beach. Who knows? And now we also have Dennis Dunbar joining us. Welcome back to the show, Dennis. We had you on a previous episode. It was great. We're glad to have you back. You're a member of fakepigskin.com. You want to tell us a little bit about why you contribute to that website and that organization?
Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to say thanks for having me back on. I'm pretty fond of Major League Fantasy Sports. This is actually where I got my start. So, I want to give a shout out to the El Presidente, Corey Roberts, for, taking a chance on me. And, like you said, I write for Fake Pigskin. I do rankings. I wrote some stuff in our draft guide, which is available now on fakepigskin.com. I should have some projections coming out soon. I just got to do some final tweaking to them just to make sure everything aligns. My completions align with my pass catchers' receptions and passing yards with receiving yards and touchdowns and so forth. So, once I get all that rolling, then I'll be releasing those. I also host a weekly podcast called The Angle of Pursuit with my buddy at Notorious Crow, Kyle Roberts. So check us out on fakepigskin.com/podcast. And I also will be a expert ranker for fantasypros.com this year, so I'm excited about that.
Well, it sounds like you definitely have your hands full, man. So congrats with that, and I look forward to checking out all your stuff. Definitely. Today we have a really good show for you. We'll be talking about quarterbacks, tight ends, and the best combinations of quarterback and tight end that we can find in the NFL. Before we do get going here officially today, I would like to thank our sponsors. We have a great relationship with Sports Palooza Radio, who does host a Major League Fantasy Sports baseball show every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Brian Lewis, who is the owner of Real Deal Dynasty Sports. White River Graphics, who you can check out at wrgraphics.biz, and Ron Chandler of SchandlerPark.com. There are a ton of great players for us to discuss here today, guys, and I'm really excited to get going. So let's just get this show on the road. First guy I want to talk about, perennial MVP candidate, probably the number one quarterback in all of fantasy, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. Ron, I'm going to start with you. Is Rodgers the number one guy off the board at the quarterback position, or is there somebody else that you would take first?
I think you're basically splitting the hairs between these two guys. They're both in that the other guy being Andrew Luck. They're both on prolific offenses where passing is the name of the game, and those offenses thrive off the passing game. So, as far as all the pieces, like I said, flip a coin. If I'm going to pick one of these guys, I'm probably going to go the Andrew Luck way, because I just feel like him playing in a dome gives him a little bit more of an advantage over Aaron Rodgers in those cold months up in Green Bay. It gets really cold up there, frigid. They don't call it the frozen tundra for nothing, So I think that's the only advantage really that Luck has is is playing in a dome. And I think outside of that, I would be thrilled to have either one of these guys, Aaron Rodgers or Andrew Luck, as my starting quarterback. Obviously, if you're going to draft one of these two guys, you're going to pay a premium to get them on your roster, but they are going to give you a pretty big advantage over other teams that are playing lesser quarterbacks every week and starting them, because when you draft a player like Aaron Rodgers or Andrew Luck for that matter, you pretty much don't have to worry about any type of backups because they're so durable and they're out there every week. And with the exception of their bye weeks and maybe a really, 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 really tough matchup, they're slam dunks every week to be 20 plus fantasy points on your roster. So I mean, that to me, my strategy I usually employ is I don't wait on quarterbacks. I will get one of these guys if I can early and just build around that quarterback because it's such an important position. So that's my strategy.
Two follow-ups for you. First one, where do you think it's safe enough to take a guy like Luck or Rodgers? Would you take them with the 5th overall pick? Would you take them, or would you lean more towards 8 through 10, somewhere in that range?
I think if you're drafting Luck, I think in most leagues he's probably going to go before Rodgers. I think a lot of people are anticipating a huge monster year this year, building off last year's season. 45 touchdowns in the upward. So I think Luck. I wouldn't be shocked to see Luck go in the first 5 picks. I think Rodgers, on the other hand, you may be able to sneak and get him maybe the back end of the first round or even in the second round. So it really depends on the league and the setup, especially if you're playing in a league that's 6 points for a passing touchdown. It makes those top elite options at quarterback even that much more valuable. So if it's a 4-point per touchdown league, then yeah, drop those guys down into the top of the second round, maybe third round. But I doubt these guys are going to last to the third round, especially Luck. I think the secret's out, and this year people are going to go after him, and they're going to go hard to get him in the first round. So top 6 picks, that's where I see him. And like I said, with Rodgers, back end of first, start of second.
Yeah, I would have to totally agree with you. And for the first time, possibly in Luck's career, I would say he probably has as good, if not better, weapons to go to than Rodgers does as well. And while saying that, I'm going to go over to Dennis and see what he has to say about Rodgers versus Andrew Luck. And also, do you agree that Luck might have the better core of players to work with this year than Rodgers does? Like, does he have the better weapons? Because that might be the only way to really decide which one of these guys is the better quarterback for fantasy this year.
That's a pretty interesting debate there, but I would slightly give the edge to the Green Bay receivers. Even though I think Frank Gore's a great running back, I still prefer a younger Lacy over an aging Frank Gore. But the problem with these two quarterbacks is where you have to take them, like Ron said. Luck is almost guaranteed to be a first-round pick. Rodgers very rarely will make it out of the second round. So, I'm personally not willing to take either one of them there. I'm the kind of guy who waits on quarterback. I don't wait too late. I wait. Like this year, you can get a Drew Brees or a Peyton Manning, as a 9th or 10th quarterback. Well, Peyton Manning, I've seen that. It's the ADP's climbing now a little bit, since Demaryius has signed his contract and stuff. But, with that being said, quarterback's so deep, and I just don't see spending a top 1 or 2 pick on him. And Luck was awesome last year. I mean, he didn't finish outside the top 12 in any week except for Week 17 versus Dallas, which the whole entire team didn't show up. So I really don't hold that against him, even though it kind of sucked. It happened in the playoffs. So, the thing with Aaron Rodgers is he had 9 weeks of top 12 finishes, so he was good for the most part of the year. But there was 3 games where he finished outside the top 24. So when Rodgers is bad, he's bad. And I know we don't say that too often, but it does happen. So, I personally won't own either one of those guys. If I had to pick one, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers because I can get him a round or 2 later. And also, I expect Luck to regress a little bit. I know originally with my original projections, I just made up a word there, rankings and projections. But with my original projections, man, I had Luck, throwing well over 40 touchdowns. And then the more I thought about that, I was like, you know what, that really hasn't happened before. That's not saying it can't, but to have an honest projection, I'm going to kind of go by what I've seen before. I mean, we was talking in 2012 as Matthew Stafford being, potentially the number one quarterback off the board, coming off his 5,000-yard, 41 touchdown season in 2011, which ironically was also his third year. And we've seen he's got nowhere close to that. Andrew Luck is a way better quarterback than Matt Stafford. Don't twist what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, we can look back to Brady in 2007. He didn't finish that strong next year because he tore his ACL, but Peyton Manning 2013. I mean, we see these guys have these great statistical years, and they fail to live up to expectations the following year. So, I'm afraid that's going to happen with Luck. Now, that being said, if I see Andrew Luck there in the third round, I'll take him 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
He won't be there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he's going to be there either. But I agree with you. I think I would go Andrew Luck over Rodgers this year. Really more because of what Ron said with the dome versus the cold weather that Rodgers has to deal with later in the year. But let's get Matt in on this. Matt, what do you think? Rodgers or Luck? Is it a wash?
It's very close, but I got 3 reasons why I would pick Luck over Rodgers, and you guys already hit on it. The weather, playing in the dome in November and December, that's going to make a difference. The second one is that Luck is actually kind of sneaky with his rushing stats. I mean, he's able to chip in 44 points last year just through rushing numbers. So I think that gives him an edge over Rodgers. And then the last one, Rodgers, he's starting to – I'm not saying he's injury prone, but that's each of the last 2 years now. He's been nicked up, and I think Luck is maybe a little more durable. So, that whenever you're, that close 1 and 1A, you just have to try to nitpick and try to find things. Last year's numbers, Luck averaged 24 points per game, Rodgers averaged 23 points per game. So, I mean, it's super tight. First round pick, I wouldn't touch either of them in the first round, just because, for example, last year, Ryan Tannehill, he was the 11th rated quarterback, and he averaged 20 points per game, right? So, that's only a difference of 3 or 4 points a week, and you're talking about getting Tannehill, 7 or 8 rounds later. So, I'm in the camp of waiting on a quarterback, especially this year. It's pretty deep.
Yeah, that's a really good point you brought up with Tannehill. And now that you brought him up, I mean, let's talk about him. He had a really good season last year. And do you want to get us started on Tannehill and where you think he's headed this year? Do you think he's going to regress? Do you think he's only getting better? And where do you think the Dolphins are going to, end up in that AFC East?
Yeah, progressing is definitely the word, because each of his first 3 seasons, he's increased his yardage total, he's increased his touchdown total, and he's another guy that chips in points on the ground. So I know they brought in Kenny Stills to replace Mike Wallace, and I don't even view Mike Wallace as a loss at all. I watched my fair share of Dolphin games last year, and they just couldn't get on the same page. So maybe he'll have a little more luck connecting with Stills. But I see, Tannehill, he's, finished 11th last year and 11th rated quarterback. So, I would say that I would look for him to finish right around there again. With the ground numbers that he can churn out, he has some upside that could put him into the top 10.
Yeah, he's sneaky fast, huh?
Yeah.
He is really, really quick. Do you think, Matt, that he does enough on the ground, though, to really warrant taking him because of that?
Well, no, yeah, you don't want to base it all on that. Like, okay, for example, last year he put out 38 points through rushing statistics, and that's way above league average. I would say that's probably in the top 5 as far as quarterback production. So I mean, that's just kind of an added bonus. But I think that's turned into a more of a pass-heavy offense. As far as Lamar Miller, he's not the type of back that's going to be carrying it 20 or 25 times a game. So I think they're putting more and more on Tannehill, and they proved that by going out and getting him another weapon in the first round, Parker from Louisville. So I know he's a little banged up, but I think he's going to contribute this year too.
Oh, fair enough. Ron, your thoughts on Tannehill?
Well, I mean, I definitely see him as a young player that's, ascending, and he's definitely got a lot more targets this year. And I kind of agree with Matt in saying the Mike Wallace. I don't think that's a big loss for them because if you think about it, Ryan Tannehill doesn't throw the deep ball good anyway. He's more of a dink and dunk, a little bit better than Alex Smith, but I would say, that's pretty much in line with what he does in his game. He's not going to wow you with these 50-yard passes and these deep throws. But he does have the pieces in place, I think, this year. Coming over from New Orleans, Kenny Stills is a big-time burner. I think he can do more than that in his game. I think he can be a big option for them and a big-time catcher in that offense. So he'll play a big role in that offense. And I also like Jarvis Landry, his second year. I think he'll be a dynamite PPR wide receiver. So, I mean, all the targets are there for Tannehill. I just personally, I think that there's definitely he could definitely fall on his face. So to me, I'm not going to pay more for him than say if I can get a Philip Rivers or if I can get a Tony Romo. If I'm going to wait on quarterback in a couple of my leagues and just try to play that strategy for once, if I do that, then I'm not going to own Tannehill because I feel like people are going to reach for him a little bit sooner than a more proven commodity, say Tony Romo and like I said with Philip Rivers. Those two guys, to me, are more proven. I think they're going to be more durable, and they're going to be in offenses that you pretty much know what you're going to get from those guys on a weekly basis and more consistency. So I think Tannehill will have some big weeks, but the small weeks or the weeks that he doesn't really do much could really hurt you over the long run.
Yeah, I would have to. I would definitely have to agree with that. I mean, that's what makes or breaks your fantasy season usually is certain guys that you're expecting a lot out of. They give you those weeks where they can win you the week, but other weeks they give you very little production. That's just going to kill you. You need guys that are more consistent, especially at the quarterback position. So that's a good point. Dennis, your thoughts on Ryan Tannehill?
I thought Tannehill was actually pretty consistent. I mean, he was one of 5 quarterbacks to post double-digit fantasy points in 15 out of 16 weeks. So he's among some pretty good company with those other 4 players that has done that. But Tannehill, what I like to see is he has increased his touchdowns every year, his passing yards, and his deep ball was an issue, but it might not be as bad as you think. He was 13th according to Pro Football Focus as far as his deep ball accuracy. He completed 37%, and that's not too far off from guys like, Ben Roethlisberger, who completed 38%, and I can't even remember the guy right next to him. It's Philip Rivers is like 38%. So, I mean, he's not too far off from some of those guys we do trust. I think a lot of that is him and Wallace just never got that chemistry. If you look back to 2013 on his deep passes with Brian Hartline, his completion percentage was a lot higher than it was with Wallace. So I think that was more of a chemistry thing. I don't know if it's an issue with Wallace or I don't know. But, I'm not going to knock him for that. I'm going to believe that he can throw a deep ball and he can get better because that's what he's shown me every year. He's got statistically better. And Matt brought him up earlier, but Devontae Parker, I mean, that guy's a stud, man. He's got his number 1 receiver now, and Jarvis Landry is no slouch at number 2. Landry is a very underrated receiver going into his second year, I think, and he presents a good value, a guy that his floor is almost, catching 90 balls. I mean, who doesn't want that out of their receiver? So, if you're one to wait on quarterback like I am, Tannehill's a great target, and I couldn't argue with anybody taking him above like Eli Manning and maybe even a Roethlisberger or something. I mean, I personally would take Roethlisberger because I'm a Steelers homer, but he is in that same tier and that guy who could make that jump this year. So. And I ain't even got to Greg Jennings, who still has some value. Jordan Cameron, who's a great move tight end, and what could have been in Cleveland, but maybe now we'll see it in Miami. I mean, look what Charles Clay was able to do in that offense. How much better as an athlete than Jordan Cameron than Charles Clay? So I'm very excited about Miami. I mean, almost as excited as I am about Philadelphia because that's where Bill Lazor come from. That's the system he's trying to implement. You got pass catching running backs like Jay Ajayi, who was one of the best pass catching backs in this class. I mean, Tannehill should have a good year, man. It really wouldn't surprise me if he snuck into the top 5 or 6, honestly.
Interesting. Ron, it looks like you have something you want to add. So why don't you hit us with it?
Well, we're gonna talk about him in a little bit, but I thought right now would be a good time to bring him up, and that's Matthew Stafford. Um, I was wondering from your guys' take, who would you rather own, Matthew Stafford or Ryan Tannehill, based off of I guess I'll start with you, Dennis, since I'd like to get your take. I know just gave it on Tannehill, but would you rather own Stafford or Tannehill? And as far as their ADP, who do you think presents the better value out of the two?
I don't even think Stafford's a starter in a 12-team league, if that answers your question. And he just didn't seem to do very well in that system last year, even though he improved some of his stats and improved his footwork and stuff. It just seemed to be a dink and dunk offense. We'll see if how much of that was attributed to Calvin Johnson being out of the lineup, but honestly, it's not much of a choice for me. And maybe I take them both because their ADP allows for that. Because maybe Stafford, I don't know, maybe he returns to glory. Because I can't dismiss his 2011. That was a hell of a season he put together. So. But to answer your question, Ron, it's Tannehill. His arrow is pointing up, whereas, Stafford's just pointing down.
I'm actually gonna take Stafford in this case. I just have a feeling that he bounces back, and I just like those. I like him having Calvin Johnson there and Golden Tate and just the options that he has. I just kind of feel like, again, the stadium being a tiebreaker. The dome's nice for him in the cold weather games. So as far as that goes, I think Stafford can't be any worse than he was last year, but I think he's the quarterback that's somewhere between that 2011 year and then 2014. And if he can improve and land somewhere between there, I think his numbers overall this year will be better than Tannehill. So I don't know, Matt. I'd like to get your take on this question and which guy you would rather own on your fantasy team.
I like Tannehill. Don't get me wrong, but I'm getting behind Matt Stafford this year. I'm going to give him a pass last year because it was his first year in a new system. The guy from the Saints, what was it? Lombardi came up, and he's running the show in Detroit now. So I think it took him a year to get used to the system. Calvin was banged up. They brought in Amir Abdullah, and he's supposed to contribute out of the backfield. Volume last year was Stafford's problem. He threw just over 600 passes, I think, and that's the lowest that he's had in his career. Out of the three years, he's been a top 10 quarterback. Last year was an off year for him. So I think he bounces back. As far as value, if we're talking about average draft position, I think those guys right now are both going right around round 8, round 9. So I think you're gonna have to pick one or the other. And Stafford's done it. He's over 4,000 yards every year. So I'm going with Matt Stafford.
All right. It looks like we have 2 votes for Stafford and 1 vote for Tannehill, and we're gonna let the host here, Lou Landers from California, break this tie. Well, actually, it's not a tie yet. But we'll see what he says.
It won't be a tie because although I agree with everything Dennis had to say about Tannehill, I'm going to have to go with Stafford because of how often he throws the ball and because he has Calvin Johnson. It's that simple to me. Throws it a lot, and he's got, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in National Football League. But, I mean, Tannehill's a good player, so I wouldn't discount Tannehill. I just think that Stafford, I think it was Matt that brought it up. He was in a new system last year. That can always affect someone. If you look back at the Steelers, when Gailey, I believe it's Gailey, first got there, they had a bit of an off season offensively. But last year, they were one of the best offenses in the NFL. So eventually, a quarterback, if he gets used to his new system, he can flourish. I think it was one of the best offensive seasons Roethlisberger's ever put up last year. So that could be the same thing for Stafford this year. But unless anyone has anything else to add about Stafford, looks like Dennis does. Dennis?
Yeah. Matt kind of brought up a point in my favor. He said, "Oh, the volume's not there, and Stafford's volume dependent." Well, hello, that Detroit defense is absolutely nasty. That's a great defense. So they're not going to have to sling the pigskin that many times a year to compete. They want to run the ball. They want to control the clock. They want to use that good defense. Yes, he has Calvin Johnson, but Andy Dalton has A.J. Green. So is Andy Dalton, a top 5 because of that logic? I mean,
He actually Andy Dalton he was a top 5 2 years ago. So I mean, it's having a big weapon like that can make a difference. Now I'm not saying that I'm an Andy Dalton fan. I put him out in an article last week as like 26th rated quarterback, but so to my point, Andy Dalton was actually a top 5 quarterback at one point in his I'm going to call it a sad career.
but do you see him getting back in the top 5? Are you
No,
projecting?
no, never again.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I agree. Dalton's probably not a top 5 guy, but what the point that Ennis brought up is fair. It's absolutely fair. But I mean, personally, I'm not basing it just off the fact that he has Calvin Johnson. I'm basing it off what he's done in his past, and I think Golden Tate's a really solid number 2 there. And I mean, do the Lions really have a run game? That's another thing. Ron, do you think the Lions really have a run game that they're going to be able to rely on it?
I think they're going to have to, and I think the drafting of Amir Abdullah says a lot about that offense and where it's going. And I think they're going to plug and play those guys in and out with Bell. So it's just a matter of whether or not Bell can stay healthy, and then if he's not, if Abdullah really is what a lot of these scouts think he is, I mean, they could have a really big centerpiece for that offense in place. But I wanted to say one thing about and just kind of bring it up and maybe get your guys' take real quick. It's how much of this Stafford, falling from grace, do you think maybe might be affected by Scott Linehan leaving and going to Dallas? I mean, was there a drop off after that? Because maybe it is more of a offensive coordinator. How they're running, how they're calling the plays, and what they're doing. Maybe it's just not the best scheme for Matthew Stafford. Maybe they need to change some things and maybe go back to what Stafford was doing good back in 2011. I'm pretty sure Scott Linehan was their offensive coordinator at that time.
Well, that's a good point because there's probably a direct correlation between the success the Cowboys had offensively last year with Scott Linehan. So that's a really good point. Matt, do you have any comments on that point made by Ron?
Yeah, well, last year was, like I said, it was the lowest pass attempts in Stafford's career. So, I like Tannehill. It's not that I dislike Tannehill, but it's just that I'm looking at the body of work that Stafford's put in. Over the past 4 years, he's averaged 4,700 yards, 28 touchdowns. Now that's inflated a little bit because of that monster season that he had. But at the end of the day, those numbers are still there. So I don't know. Year 2, Joyke Bell. I just don't see them, pounding that guy into the line for 3.5 yards a carry. Reggie Bush is out. Which hurts him a little bit as in the passing game, but they got Theo Riddick. He's basically a receiver dressed in a running back's number. So I don't know. I think it comes down to if you think Stafford's going to throw the ball 650 times this year, which I don't know, that might be a little bit high. But if you think he's going to throw that many times, you should definitely take him and expect him to put up top 10 numbers.
Dennis, how about you before we wrap up with Stafford and move along?
Real quick side note on Golden Tate, you said he's a great number 2. He was great when Megatron was out, but when Megatron was in, he only averaged 7 fantasy points per game. Had that been extrapolated over the whole season, he would have been like wide receiver 35 and not the top 15 receiver he finished as. So don't expect that when Megatron's on the field because he's a target monster. So, but as far as the running game, I think it's going to be vastly improved. I mean, Amir Abdullah was my number 2 rated running back in this class. The kid is an absolute stud. He's electric when he gets the ball in his hands. The Detroit made some good moves in free agency and in the draft, drafting Laken Tomlinson to shore up that line. They know they can't win by having the 28th ranked rushing offense that they had last year, so they're going to try to go there and establish a run, play good defense, like I said, and I can't wait to see Amir Abdullah run on that turf in the Dome.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point too, because their their rushing offense last year was just dreadful, and without it, you're right, they didn't stand much of a chance. But let's move on and talk about a guy who threw the game-ending interception in last year's Super Bowl. Um, Russell Wilson becoming a superstar. He is probably already a superstar, but he's definitely on the rise still. One of the better athletes in the NFL, in my opinion. For his size, he might be the best quarterback in the NFL. And I'd like to get your guys' opinions on him because he still doesn't seem to be spoken about in the same breath as a Brady or a Rodgers or a Breeze or a Andrew Luck. But I think he might be on his way there. Ron, do you agree with me, or are you on a different wavelength when it comes to Russell Wilson?
Well, I think Russell Wilson has proved a lot in his short career in the NFL, and it seems like every year it's been a progression. He's gotten better, and he was probably the most ready NFL quarterback out of that draft. Well, with maybe the exception of Luck 2 years ago. So, I mean, actually 2012. But this is the kind of guy that, with the dual threat ability that he possesses, he could definitely take the next step and be, top one or two finishes in the top two this year for passing touchdowns and overall touchdowns at the quarterback position. So he presents that high upside. But he's definitely, a quarterback that you're going to have to draft high and, third, fourth round. He may last to the fifth. If you're lucky, you might go get him in the fifth round. But he's also going through some contract issues right now, so that's something just to keep an eye on. I wouldn't, let you deter that from drafting the player, though. I mean, he's that good. So I'm just curious to see what they're going to do as far as opening up the offense, if they're going to finally take the training wheels off this guy and let him pass the ball and let him just throw the ball, 20 to 25 times a game or more. So I don't think, the way it looks, I don't know that they're going to go, overhaul the offense and go, with a pass-heavy scheme. But now with Jimmy Graham in the fold, it's definitely something to consider and keep an eye on, because I just have some itching suspicion that they are going to pass the ball a lot more this year, and it's going to be a boom to Russell Wilson's overall fantasy value. So I like him a lot this year, actually.
Yeah, I was going to add that about Jimmy Graham as well. It's a great point. He's never really had, in my opinion, that number one receiving target. Well, now he does. So it should be very, very interesting to see exactly how that impacts him. Matt, your thoughts on Russell Wilson? Should he be grouped in that top five as one of the elite guys, or is he still have some work to do?
It's close. It's very close. Borderline. I think right now he's going in round 4 as the fourth quarterback selected. So he's right there. He's ready to take the next step. I personally, I think I'm going to have him around 7th whenever my final rankings come out. And the reason is I'm going to take you on a little journey here with some numbers. Just bear with me. All right. So last year he racked up 121 points in ground stats. The year before that, 60. The year before that, 73. So, and last year he averaged 21 points per game. And if you let's eliminate some of those rushing stats, because I think last year that was a career year. The 850 yards, the 6 touchdowns. I don't think we're going to see that ever again. So let's subtract it. Let's say he regresses back to what he had done the previous 2 years. So you'll take 55 points off of those rushing stats. That would get him back to his average from the previous 2 years. And now all of a sudden, his average is down to 18.3 points per game, which puts him actually behind the guy we were talking about earlier in Ryan Tannehill. So my thing with Russell Wilson is it's hard to depend on a guy whenever it's coming down to his rushing stats, whether he's going to be considered, in the top, 5, if he can do another top 5 season like he did last year. Passing, Graham is going to make a difference, but still, they're not going to change. With the success they've had the last 2 years, they're not going to all of a sudden come out and throw it 35 or 40 times a game. The last 2 years, they've actually rated 32nd in the league in pass attempts, and the year before that, 31st. So I don't see him duplicating a rushing season that he had last year, and therefore it's going to be a lower fantasy production.
Dennis, what are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree with Matt more on this one, actually. And we got bit by that snake once with Colin Kaepernick in 2013. Had that great rushing year, and it just wasn't sustainable. He's a quarterback. Like, they don't want their quarterback, running that much. It was just, Russell Wilson's a great improvising player. So as long as the passing is not there to support the fantasy stats, and like Matt said, I don't believe you can't bank 800 rushing yards. Now, a guy like Cam Newton, who, like, the offense has been designed around that to where he gets 100 carries a year, yes, I can maybe bank on that a little more with the Cam Newton. But, I don't think we're going to see Russell Wilson's full potential. We're slowly trending that way as their great drafting class on defense starts to get through their rookie contracts. They start demanding more money because they're, an elite defense. So the guys start leaving on free agency. If they don't replace those guys, that defense ain't going to be as good, ain't going to be as dominant. They're not going to be able to control the clock, run the ball, and that's when it's going to open up wide is when that defense downticks a little bit. Who knows? Maybe they're the smartest team in the league and they can keep stockpiling these good picks. I don't see it happening that way, but you never know. So, I think eventually, Pittsburgh fans have waited forever to see what Ben Roethlisberger is now. Pittsburgh used to be a run-heavy team, exactly how Seattle is. They was built on defense and running the ball. Well, now that defense they got old. They demanded contracts. They left in free agency. Now their defense is crap because they wasn't able to, hit twice like that on amazing draft classes. So now we're seeing the old gunslinger, and I think Russell Wilson's eventually going to take, that same route. But I don't see it being this year, maybe not even next, but after that, probably.
That's a very interesting take. Well, what about Cam Newton wasn't on anyone's list this week, but what about Cam Newton over Russell Wilson? Would you take him over Russell Wilson because he's going to be rushing the ball, or is Russell Wilson still the safer pick? And let's go to Matt with that question first.
Yeah, I'm way down on Cam Newton this year. So for me, it would definitely be Russell Wilson over Cam. And I don't know what we're going to see from Cam this year. The previous years he's been running it, and they've been treating him like a goal line back at the goal line basically, and giving him the 1-yard carries. But this year it was like $100+ million contract he signed. So now all of a sudden is the front office going to maybe get in the coaching staff's ear and say, hey, let's rein it in. I don't exactly want to see our $60 million guarantee go flying through the air at the goal line anymore. So the weapons is his problem too. I mean, you got Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen, but outside of that, I mean, I can't even think off the top of my head. I mean, they drafted Funchess, I guess, but he's a rookie, so you never know what you're going to get there. So he's another guy. He's kind of like Russell Wilson in the fact that you need the rushing numbers for him to produce, and it's decreased each of his 4 years now, or 3 or 4 years, whatever. It's gone down each year. So is his rushing touchdowns. So I'm down on Cam this year, just mainly because of like I mentioned about the lack of weapons and just that he's not going to be able to get it done on passing numbers alone.
Matt, do you think it's safe to say that Cam Newton's the best running back on the Carolina Panthers right now?
Yeah, you might be right on that. And I actually kind of like Mike Tolbert too. He's the bowling ball.
Ron, your thoughts, Newton or Wilson?
Well, I mean, because they're both going around the same place, I guess as far as upside, if I'm going for upside and maybe more consistent numbers across the board, I'd probably go with Russell Wilson. But I think Matt is on something with as far as the carries, and I don't see Russell Wilson running the ball as much as he has in the past this year. So based off of that, I just have a gut feeling as far as Cam Newton bouncing back this year, and it's at the same time I'm agreeing with Matt. I'm going to disagree on the Panthers side of it because I feel like Funchess gives them another big vertical weapon, big weapon down in the red zone for Cam Newton, and he's already got Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. I mean, those are 3 guys that are going to be tough to guard and match up with, anywhere, but especially in the red zone. They're big bodies, and they're gonna be tough to defend. So that I think gives them a major advantage. And I think they still will. I mean, Cam Newton's going to get enough carries with his legs, and like Dennis said, that's the game that they've pretty much done everything around Cam Newton and his legs. Well, I think it's time that they start going with the passing offense and depend less on his legs, but at the same time, he'll still be good for 4 to 5 rushing touchdowns a year, regardless of how many carries he's going to get. And I think that offense will move the ball down the field. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess because I could probably get Cam Newton later, a little bit later maybe than Russell Wilson, I would probably draft Newton because I think that his upside's still almost up there with Wilson, and I can get him a little bit later possibly than Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that's a good point based on where you would be able to draft them, because it seems like we're all agreeing here, and I'm going to go to Dennis in a moment, that they're pretty on par with one another. So really the deciding factor could just be which one can you get later in the draft. So that's a great point, Ron, and it's something that all of our viewers should certainly keep in mind going forward. Dennis, before we move on to another quarterback, what are your thoughts on the Newton versus Russell Wilson debate here?
Here's the difference. Cam Newton, Carolina designs their offense around Cam Newton. Them are designed run plays. He's the first read in the red zone most times. Whereas Russell Wilson's yards come more on like a jailbreak, running for his life, improvised plays. I mean, they ran some pistols. Some of it was designed, some play action. But a lot of that was generated from, penetration coming to the line and Russell Wilson just making something happen. So that's the difference. That's why I can say I don't like depending on a quarterback for rushing stats like Russell Wilson, but yet I will for Cam Newton because that's how they've deployed him. Outside of last year, I'm not going to count last year against Cam Newton. He had rib injury, and that was just an injury-plagued season. That wasn't the Cam Newton we've seen for the first 4 years of the league. So, I'm going to take that as an outlier. So let's get back to where Cam Newton has been. He's been about at 30 total touchdowns throughout his career, whether, half being rushing, half passing. It's turning the other way around. Yes, he's had less rushing touchdowns, Matt, but he's also had more passing touchdowns. So you're still not losing that touchdown production with Cam Newton. So I think the addition and the drafting of Devin Funchess is enough to at least add 2 touchdowns to Cam Newton. I know that's a pretty rudimentary, simplified way to look at it, but, what's 2 touchdowns to a great big target like Devin Funchess? It seems pretty plausible as a rookie, right? So that would put Cam Newton at about 32 total touchdowns for the year. I add in his, let's see, my projections, I have him projected at 3,600 yards, which I think is pretty doable, 110 rushing attempts, and if I go off his career average, which is like, I don't even know it offhand, but I got him for 590 rushing yards, 3,600 passing yards, and 32 touchdowns. Well, then I turn that into fantasy points. Right now I got him projected as my quarterback 5, right behind Russell Wilson by about 10 points. So, they're neck and neck. So if it's that close, 10 points, that's less than a point a week, I'm going to do the tiebreaker like Ron said, and I'm going to take Cam Newton at the end of the 6th round instead of in the beginning or the middle of the 4th round where you have to take Russell Wilson.
Well, this will definitely be something that we should be following throughout the season. Is the which one of these guys is the guy to go to necessarily, but it'll certainly be something to revisit. Let's talk about Carson Palmer of Arizona, because before he went down last year with an injury, it kind of looked like the Cardinals were one of the best teams in the entire NFL. Then all of a sudden he went down with an injury, and things kind of fell apart for them. So do you think that Carson Palmer is going to be productive this year, or do you think he's just kind of going to be injured again and he might help you while he's healthy for 5 to 8 weeks and then kind of just kill your team if you're relying on him? Let's start with Matt.
Yeah, I'm in the Carson Palmer camp this year. Here's the numbers. 6 games last year, started out hot, so if you extrapolate that out over a full season, it would have worked out to 4,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Now that's, those are, to me, that's top 10 or borderline top 10 fantasy production. So, right now where he's going, I'm not even sure where he's going, to be honest, but I'm sure it's outside of the 12th or 13th round. So I think the value where you can get Carson Palmer right now is well worth taking him. As far as how he bounces back, he tore that same ACL in 2006 maybe, and he came back that following year, and he had a good year statistically wise. Now, he's 10 years older, so what's the recovery going to look like this year? That's what we're going to find out. But for where he's currently being drafted, he's a draft day bargain.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely a draft day bargain if he stays healthy, but he's kind of getting up there in age, and I'm kind of worried about him because I think this is last year was the second straight year that this kind of happened to him, and it kind of seems like it's going to be a trend. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, Ron, and Dennis, but hasn't Palmer kind of had injury issues for a lot of his career? I feel like, I mean, obviously not every single season, but it seems to me like this is the kind of guy that can be going along swimmingly, and then all of a sudden an injury occurs, boom, done for the season, and you're scrambling to find a replacement on the waiver wire. So, Ron, go right ahead.
Honestly, I don't really think he's injury prone per se. I think he's had more of bad luck in his career. I mean, if you go back and look at his overall career numbers, I mean, he's started at least 13 games in all of but 3 seasons as a pro. So I mean, and those were the two of those seasons, were the ACL injuries. And I don't know if you saw the first one he had when he was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure Dennis has, but that was kind of a fluke injury too. I think it was against the Steelers, Dennis's team. So, I think that he's at that point in his career where I think he's still young enough to bounce back from this type of injury and come back strong. And another reason why I really think that he will be a very serviceable option is because of all the pass-catching options he has at his disposal. I mean, I think John Brown coming into his second year is going to be a big-time playmaker for him. And I think Michael Floyd, we all know he's capable of having a huge monster game and then just completely disappearing, for the next 5 weeks. But the talent's still there, so I wouldn't completely write him off either. And then you got the ultimate pro, Larry Fitzgerald, who I think will bounce back this year and be, a reliable, wide receiver too. I mean, he's not that wide receiver one that we all loved, 5-6 years ago, but he's definitely still going to be serviceable. And I think last year's touchdown numbers, you're going to have to throw them out the window, because if Carson Palmer starts, let's just say 14 games this year, he's going to put us some pretty big numbers. And I think Fitzgerald and John Brown are going to be the main beneficiaries of those passing yards and those passing touchdowns. So I like Palmer a lot. I would just preface this by saying, if you're going to draft him, like Matt said, you're going to get him late after the 12th round, great bargain. You just want to package him with another quarterback that pair him with another quarterback that is durable, like say Philip Rivers, or even if Tony Romo, if you get him a little bit later too. Those two type of quarterbacks that will be out there every week, or Eli Manning would be another good example. So definitely don't draft Carson Palmer and Sam Bradford both on your fantasy football team. Is what I'm saying.
You'll be asking for disaster if you do that, I think. Dennis, tell me your thoughts on Carson Palmer this year. Do you agree with what Ron and Matt are saying, or do you have a different take?
No, I mean, I pretty much agree, and he's going off at QB 17. If I'm going to wait on quarterback, I'm going to take a quarterback that's on a good team and has a good offense, which Arizona does, obviously, as you guys have talked. I mean, it was a 10-win team last year, and, they don't have a horrible schedule this year. I mean, here's their first 3 weeks. New Orleans, at home versus New Orleans, at Chicago, then at San Francisco. Those 3 teams don't scare me at all. So, if I'm playing DFS, he's a good, start. I'm sure he's going to be dirt cheap in the DFS format and things like that. So, no, I mean, why not, dude? Like, he has just as much upside as anybody being drafted in that tier. He's actually a lot safer than other guys being drafted in that tier, where guys like RG3 and Andy Dalton and guys like that are being drafted. So yeah, Carson's a good pick this year, a good value, and like you guys said, I mean, he was top 5, top 6 quarterback when he was on the field this year. So I don't see that changing at all in that offense.
All right. Well, very fair points about Carson Palmer. I want you guys to tell me about two guys I'm going to bring up here now. Who would you rather have on your fantasy roster? One of them has already proven himself to be a good quarterback at times. The other one is entering a sophomore season. Teddy Bridgewater of the Minnesota Vikings and Robert Griffin III of the Washington Redskins. Which one of these guys, if you had to have one of them on your roster, which one are you going with? I kind of already know Ron's answer. I feel like it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater, but let's start with Ron.
Well, let me preface this first by saying I had to make a decision, and I'll try to make this quick. In a dynasty team or league that I'm in, I had to make a decision in February of this year. I could only carry two quarterbacks. Well, at the time I had three quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, RG3, and Teddy Bridgewater. So, you tell me. The decision I had to make was I had to cut one of those guys, could only carry two into this year's draft, and I cut RG3. So, that should answer your question. Even with an aging Peyton Manning, I'm still going to keep him and try to win this year. And the future's bright for Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's just scratching the surface right now. I think Norv Turner leading that offense is just going to be a boom to his career numbers. And I think every year he's going to take the next step forward. And I said it last year, and I wrote about this guy, and I said he's the most NFL-ready quarterback in the draft, coming into the draft, and sure enough, he was that guy. Carr was close, but Teddy Bridgewater just was more polished. And those are the type of quarterbacks that I think are able to take this. They're able to take the next step forward faster and reach that next level. It doesn't take them 3 or 4 years to finally get to that level. I think Teddy Bridgewater is that type of player. With AP coming back, he's just going to be dynamite, and I don't think there's any comparison with RG3. And I'm pretty much – I haven't lost all my hope with RG3, but I'm definitely not going to be drafting him unless it's some dynasty and it's a late round, and I'll take a flyer on him, or I'm in a two QB league and I need another quarterback. So really, I'm not going to be. I'm going to probably stay away in most cases from RG3.
Dennis, Bridgewater, RG3, neither. What's it going to be?
I'm optimistic that RG3 can turn it around, but I can't take him over Teddy. Teddy led the league in red zone completion percent with 72%, and only 3 quarterbacks in the league threw a better deep ball completion percent than Teddy Bridgewater. What's Norv Turner run? A vertical offense. What does he have on his weaponry? Mike Wallace, a vertical receiver. Charles Johnson, a vertical receiver. Kyle Rudolph, not a vertical receiver. But, no, think about it. Adrian Peterson's back, right? What does Adrian Peterson runs against 8-man fronts? So what's that leave? 3 defenders, one-on-one with Wallace and Charles Johnson? Come on, dude, I'll take that every time. That in turn, that's going to make Teddy Bridgewater, who is 4th in the league in deep ball percentage, a great pick, man. I don't think they're going to be like a 600 pass attempt team. That's kind of hurts his upside, but I think he's going to be pretty efficient. I don't think he's going to be Aaron Rodgers efficient because Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw the ball, 600 times either. But, I think Minnesota as a whole, the offense could surprise, and that's more my belief in Norv Turner. And I'll give you guys a stat. Only 2 running backs had more receptions than the Minnesota running backs combined. You talk about Matt Asiata and Jerick McKinnon had 71 receptions. So the only ones that had more receptions was Le'Veon Bell and Matt Forte. So imagine all them targets going to Adrian Peterson. That's why Adrian Peterson is my number 1 running back this year.
That's a great point, and I think it's something to really consider that you can't even really look at Bridgewater's year last year, considering he didn't have the best player the Vikings have. He didn't play 1 game for them. So that's something that's going to make a big impact, especially on a young player coming in who's going to be relying on his players around him to help him. So I definitely see him taking a step forward this year with AP being back. Before we move on, Matt, what are your thoughts on this conversation?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as these guys, and I think Bridgewater is ready to take the next step. And to be honest, I kind of regret where I ranked him. I have him at 21, and I think I need to update that. The more I think about it and get him ahead of guys like Jay Cutler that pops into my head. Last year, the final 6 weeks of the season, he was the 10th best fantasy quarterback. So I think I don't think he's going to finish in the top 10 this year, but if you're in a deep league, say if you're playing in a 14, 16-team league, he is a guy that I would feel comfortable with, running out there as my starting quarterback.
Great. Well, let's move over now to quarterback and tight end combinations, and I'm going to go to Ron here and let Ron kind of lead this conversation. There's obviously 32 different quarterback and tight end combinations in the NFL, but there's obviously a couple that really stand out. So, Ron, why don't you lead us through some of these guys?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of quarterback tight end tandems out there that are really interesting to watch, and some big time names and big time players. And it all starts with the best one, and I think Dennis beat us all to the punch this week, and he wanted to talk about the best tandem right now in the NFL, which it's hard to argue this in this segment, but the Tom Brady Gronkowski combination is bar none got to be the top one, and I'll let Dennis weigh in first on this one because to me, I'm sure he's got a lot to say about these two guys.
Actually, there's only one thing I gotta say, and that's 54 touchdowns in 65 games. Now, Gronk had, let's see, let me go to my notes here. Gronk had at least one touchdown in 46 games. That gives you a 70% chance every time you put him in your lineup that he's going to score a touchdown. There's no other tight end in the league, save maybe a Jimmy Graham, that you can have that type of chances to get touchdowns. And what do we want as fantasy owners? Touchdowns. They say don't chase the touchdowns, but they're almost a lock as long as Gronk is healthy. Now it sounds like Brady's probably going to get out of his suspension since they lowered Greg Hardy's to 4 games. It's kind of hard to, lower a guy to 4 games for, domestic abuse or whatever it was, and then a guy lets the air out of a football, and then, you give him the same punishment. So I don't think that's going to happen, and I'm not here to talk NFL politics or try to figure out Roger Goodell's mind, because I think that's another show, and that's a show for the mastermind behind Major League Fantasy Sports, Corey. He'd probably have a lot to weigh in on that. So, but, Ron, you actually brought up a good combo, and that's Phillip Rivers to Antonio Gates. And at one point, they would have rivaled, Gronk and Brady. But you know what's an interesting thing about that? And I think Antonio Gates is a guy that you should keep on your waiver wire speed dial, so to speak. But Phillip Rivers' first touchdown as a pro was to Antonio Gates. They're currently 4th all time on the touchdown to receiver list. They only trail Steve Young to Jerry Rice with they had 92 together. Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison had 118, and I'm missing one, but they have 85 total touchdowns together. So, I think Gronk and Brady's going to surpass that, obviously, but, it's hard to argue against that to be number 4 all time.
Well, just quickly piggybacking off what you said, yeah, Gates is my guy, and Gates actually won Dennis and I an expert. He helped win us an expert, fantasy football championship last year, and we decided to wait on tight end. So that was our whole game plan going into the draft, and we got Gates really late, and we felt good about it. And even though he's old, he's still producing, and he's still producing big time numbers. Just wanted to throw out one other stat on him. Tony Gonzalez leads the NFL with 111 career receiving touchdowns at the position, and Antonio Gates is right there at 99. So we're going to have a new all-time leader, maybe even possibly this year. I hope to see him break it this year because I'll be targeting him later, and I'll be drafting him, and I'll be waiting it out because he's that good, and that connection is that good. And to what Dennis said, it's over 70. I believe the actual number is 72 touchdowns between Gates and Rivers all time. So I mean that's a lot. It's a big time number. And I know Gronk and Brady are like 54, I believe. So I mean, it's someday Gronk and Brady are definitely going to pass that, and then they're going to be number 1 all time. But I think we should get it over to the guy that actually writes about quarterbacks and tight ends. He should know as well as anyone, and that's I want to get Matt Barkman's take on which combination he prefers. Out of all these combinations in the NFL between the quarterback and the tight end. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I now the tandem that I'm going to talk about, they have no touchdown passes, no touchdown catches together. but I think we're going to see maybe about a dozen this year, and that's Jimmy Graham and Russell Wilson. That you're right. They don't have the history together yet, but I think if you at the end of the year, if you add up the total fantasy points between the quarterback and tight end position, I think it's going to come down to very close between Brady, Gronk, and Russ Wilson and Graham. So the history's not there yet, but I give it 2 or 3 years, and I think we'll be putting those two together right up with the names that were already mentioned.
Yeah, it's funny because I was looking at before the show. I was looking at the top 4 active quarterback to tight end combinations in the NFL, and on our list, we basically had 3 out of those 4. The only one that wasn't on there was Vernon Davis, is an active touchdown leader in the NFL right now. He's got 57 receiving touchdowns in his career. So I think we're covering all the bases with these 3 guys. But there's another set. Actually, we should get Lou's take on this first, because I think, or at this point, I want to get his take on these guys and which one is his favorite.
Yeah, this is a difficult one. I have 3 different thoughts on it. The best one right now is still got to be Brady and Gronk. I don't think anyone can really argue with the fact that they've been the best. I also do have to agree with Matt that I think Wilson and Graham could take that over. And the bias in me, and I'm not saying these guys are the best, but they probably, maybe Rivers and Gates been playing together longer, but Tony Romo and Jason Witten are pretty much butt buddies. Like they're best friends, and like they have a lot of chemistry together. Witten is Romo's security blanket. Both of them are still top, at least top brand names at their positions. And I think that especially in a PPR type of league, Witten is still very valuable, and I think people are actually underrating him because they think he's overrated, and by thinking he's overrated, they're actually underrating him because he still does get a lot of targets, a lot of passes to him, and the Cowboys are going to score a ton of points. Romo loves getting the ball to him, even with Des Bryant there, and as much as they like to run it. So that's a tandem that I think people are kind of overlooking. Not saying they're the best, just saying that their body of work is quite impressive, and it's something to at least note. But I think quarterback and tight end combinations like this are so important, and I think it's a fascinating conversation because one can really make the other. A guy like Julius Thomas, for instance, probably is a very average tight end at best. He's athletic, he's quick, but Peyton Manning made him the superstar type tight end, and now that he's no longer in Denver, I don't see him being that big, top tight end target anymore. So the quarterback and tight ends collectively together really do impact each other's value.
Yeah, I think
real quick there. Sorry, Ron.
No, go ahead.
Real quick there, Julius Thomas had 60% of his points off touchdowns. Now he goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were dead last in touchdown attempts. So that's not going to be there. Him going to Jacksonville got him paid, but it was a death knell for fantasy owners. But I got a question I want to pose to you guys, and it's a strategy I've employed the last few years, and Ron can attest to this, where I've went tight end in round 1, and I've had mixed results because it doesn't seem like it's worked out. The one year I went, Gronk and then Graham, and then Gronk got hurt, and then last year I went Graham and then Gronk, and then Graham underperformed. Well, this year I find myself wanting to go Gronk again, but then I come across the stat that really stunned me, and it made me second guess taking Gronk in the first, and because you got to take him over an elite wide receiver or an elite running back. Is that advantage or so-called advantage at the tight end position worth it? And here's the stat I come across: is Gronk finished as the number 1 tight end on a weekly basis twice all season, and he had 8 top 10 finishes. His ADP is first round. Okay, Greg Olsen had 2 weeks also where he finished as the number 1 tight end and also had 8 top 10 finishes. and his ADP is 5th, 6th round. Granted, Gronk scored way more points at the end, and he won guys' weeks sometimes, but I was kind of shocked to see that Gronk only finished as the number 1 tight end twice in 16 games. Is that worth taking him in the first round? Is it that much of a difference to get a positional advantage? Because if it is, you could make the same argument for kicker. Steven Gostkowski has been like the number 2 scoring tight end over the last 4 years. He scored more than any tight end besides Jimmy Graham. So did them go hand in hand? It's just, where are you guys at? You guys think Gronk in the first round is a winning strategy, or is the opportunity cost too much?
Well, let me go first. I have seen a number of people take Gronk or Jimmy Graham in the past in the first round, and I kind of shook my head a little bit when it happened. But those teams have done pretty well, at least in the leagues I've played in, because those guys specifically put up wide receiver numbers at the tight end position, and they're putting up number 1 receiver type numbers at the tight end position. So I don't think it's crazy at all, man. I think you're onto something there. I think at the right time, if it's the right pick at the right time, it's a smart move.
Let me tell you this real quick. If you're taking him over top end guys, you said they perform like a wide receiver. Well, in a flex format, meaning against wide receivers, running backs, and other tight ends, Gronk finished as the 18th best player. So he wasn't even in the top 10 as far as flex. And that was another thing that kind of surprised me. So, yes, we're saying, he performs as a wide receiver 1, but yet when I look at the data, he's more like the 18th best player or 18th overall scorer.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point you're bringing up, Dennis. And I'm surprised and shocked because I thought you were the guy driving the Gronk wagon and train. But that's the thing. You got to, I'm not going to say burn a first round pick, but that's what you have to do basically to get Gronk on your team. And I don't know. In the back of my head, I'm just kind of hesitant to make that big of an investment in the first round on a player that, we look at his career and he's been, we all know the injury history is there, and it's just always in the back of my head with Gronk. So I don't know. He's just more of a risk. It's high risk, high reward, definitely, and he's that type of player that can win you a fantasy championship, and he did that for a lot of owners last year. But he could lose one for you real quick too. If you're putting all your eggs in one basket with Gronk and he's out, and he ends up getting hurt the second week of the season, and you don't even have a really good backup tight end on your roster. I mean, that's going to be a big hole. So that's the thing in the back of my head. And I would not draft him in the first round. If I can get him in the beginning of the second round or anywhere in the second round, I'm jumping all over that. But in the first round, I just realistically can't pull the trigger on a player that possesses that upside, but at the same time, he's just injury prone, and that concerns me. Also, 4 games. Let's say it's 4 games without Tom Brady. I still say, that's a huge chunk. That's a third of the season, fantasy season, and that could definitely sink you too if he's not getting the targets and he's not scoring those touchdowns every week like he was with Brady. That's 4 weeks you got to wait to get your top tight end numbers from this guy that you just burned a first round draft pick on.
Yeah, those are all things to really consider, Ron. Those are all really good points. Does anyone have anything else to add on the quarterback tight end combinations, or do you guys think we should be moving on and talk about a couple tight ends here? Because there's a couple tight ends here that I did want to get into. So unless anyone has anything else to add, let's go to.
I'll add on Gronk. Let me jump in on Gronk just for a second. Something I've been paying a lot of attention to is looking at the points per game at the top rated position points per game versus the bottom starter. So for example, the first rated tight end versus the 12th rated tight end. And so last year Gronk had 12.3 points per game, and the 12th rated tight end had which was Heath Miller, had 6 points per game. So, if you're in a 12-team league and you have Gronk, and he does what similar to what he did last year, you're going to be picking up 6 points per week on the person that had the 12th rated tight end. So just looking at that position, I think the gap at tight end is as big or bigger than any other position between the 1A versus the worst starter, so to speak. So that's my take on Gronk and just where he gets his value.
I understand your point about that, about him outscoring the 12th best tight end, but you got to account for the points that you're going to be missing from the guy you could have got in the first round where you had to take Gronk, which could be an elite running back, an elite wide receiver. And this is something I'm still trying to sort out. I'm not saying taking Gronk in the first round's a losing strategy because I've won with it. I have. But, last year was a little easier. He was a third-round pick. So this is something I'm still sorting out. I just wanted to throw out some data and some different ways to look at it because there's people on both sides of the fence. There's Ron, he's a wait on tight end guy, and there's me who's, I went tight end, or, So it's something I'm still sorting out, and I'm just trying to figure out this puzzle. And I always hear these people talk about the positional advantage, but I don't know if they're taking into account the player that you have to pass on to get Gronk.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I'm kind of with Ron too, with regards to waiting on the tight ends. But let's move it on to Ron specifically, Mr. Chicago Bear, and let's see what he has to add about Martellus Bennett, a guy who I really, really liked when he first got into the league with the Cowboys. They just didn't utilize him enough, and then he moved on. But Ron, what do you think about Martellus Bennett?
I think last year was probably I think it's going to go down as maybe possibly his career year, his career season, and I think Trestman had a lot to do with that. So I'm not saying don't draft this guy. I'm just saying as far as consistent options at the tight end position, I think he's definitely in line with say a Greg Olsen. I mean he's definitely on that same tier as Greg Olsen, and I guess if I was probably deciding between the two. Based off the quarterback position, I would probably go with Greg Olsen over Bennett. Now, having said that, I'm not going to take anything away from the guy in the big-time year he had last year, and I think he's still going to be a big-time target and maybe picks up some of those targets that we're losing with Brandon Marshall. It's going to be interesting to see how quick they bring Kevin White along in the offense, and if John Fox babies him and keeps the training wheels on him like he does with most rookies. So that's most concerning. And then I see if that happens, then someone has to pick up the slack in the offense. And I think there's a couple of players that can do that. Eddie Royal being another player in the slot that they're going to utilize a lot, going to pick up a lot of those targets. But I think what we saw from Bennett last year, I mean, it's going to be hard to duplicate or replicate for him this year. So, I mean, I'm pumping the brakes a little bit on him. And I don't know what his ADP is right now, but I'm on that mind frame where I'm just going to wait on a tight end. I'm probably not going to get Martellus Bennett because of that. And I like him as a player, and I know he hates fantasy sports, so maybe that's my problem with him.
Well, Dennis, tell me, Dennis, about Travis Kelce on the KC Chiefs. Dennis, are you still with us?
Sorry, guys. I had to unmute my mic. Caught me sleeping at the wheel. Nah, man, Kelce, dude, that's baby Gronk. Go to playerprofiler.com. My friend Matt Kelly does a great job of sorting through the comparables, and he adds in a lot of variables to when he comes out with his comps. And the closest comp to Gronkowski right now is Travis Kelce, and that's something I see on the field. That's something I've seen here in Cincinnati. He's a UC Bearcat, so I'm very familiar with him as a tight end. He's a guy I've always watched, always rooted for. Kind of had some off-the-field trouble, caused him to fall a little bit in the draft, but I mean, he's a top-tier talent, dude. He led all tight ends this year with yards after the catch. He had 490 yards after the catch. And the reason we didn't get to see his full potential this year is Andy Reid told us after the fact. Of course, they wouldn't tell us when we was plugging him in our lineup every week. And it's funny, I actually had several teams that had Jimmy Graham, Gronkowski, and Kelce. I had 3 tight ends in some leagues. So, I'm all about the tight end. Yeah, that didn't sound too good, but anyways, let me get my mind out of the gutter here. But nah, man, like he was on a limited snap count. We have no Anthony Fasano or Casano or whatever his name is. No, it's Fasano. But basically, he's a no-name guy. He's just a guy who lays down and catches touchdowns that fall in his lap like he did one week. But I think the sky's the limit for him, and I know that's a popular phrase to say, but we don't know Kelsey's upside because we didn't get to see it last year. To me, he has Gronk type upside, and Alex Smith is a guy who likes to throw to his tight end, who likes to throw down the seam, and Travis Kelsey's a seam ripping tight end, so I'm all about him this year, man. It's basically you can get the upside of Gronk in the 4th round this year.
Yeah, that'll be something interesting to look into. I agree with your analysis on Alex Smith there as well. Let's go over to Matt. Matt, do you have a tight end that you specifically do want to discuss?
Yeah, I want to talk about Delaney Walker, and I feel like he is being incredibly underrated and underdrafted this season. And I don't know if it's because of people were scared of Mariota, but if you take a look at the guys he was catching passes from last year, Charlie Whitehurst and Mettenberger, and so I mean it's not like he was playing with stud quarterbacks last season. 890 yards, 4 touchdowns. If you look at that on a point per game average, that is better than Travis Kelsey. And if we're not to go with Kelsey, because if we're talking about upside and potential, I would be all about Kelsey, comparing him to Walker. But if we're talking about ADP, which is Kelsey, if we're talking 5th round approximately, versus Walker in the 11th round, for me that's an easy decision that I would be taking Delaney Walker just based on the 6 rounds of value that I can make up for in between there.
Okay, interesting. Dennis, do you agree, disagree?
I see where he's coming from, but there's one thing that I'm accounting for in that offense, and that's Dorial Green-Beckham, one of the most talented receivers in this class, and I think he's going to demand targets. So I don't think there's going to be as much to go around for Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker was like the default number 1 there, outside of Kendall Hunter, because Kendall Wright. Justin Hunter wasn't doing much, and now they brought in Harry Douglas, Hakeem Nicks. We'll see. These are guys who are competent and capable of stealing targets away from Delaney Walker. I do think Delaney Walker's a good football player, but as far as a tight end that I think everybody's undervaluing, I don't see that. I think he's going about where he should go, in my opinion. On tight end, I'm either, if I can't get a top tier guy, then I'm swinging for the fences and I'm going upside. I'm going Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I'm going Kelsey, like I said, or even maybe like a Dwayne Allen. I would absolutely take Dwayne Allen over him. There's no maybe to it. So, I just think he's just kind of a boring. I think he's kind of safe. He's a safe guy for 500 yards and maybe like 4 touchdowns, but he's not going to win anybody no leagues. But at the same time, you're not going to get a blank in your tight end slot.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. I mean, Dwayne Allen is an interesting guy because he plays with Andrew Luck. Ron, do you have a tight end you want to bring up?
Well, I do like. I'll start off by saying I do like Matt's pick with Delaney Walker, but I have to kind of agree with Dennis. I think there'll be less targets to go to him this year. I still think he's a great tight end to target late, and I'll probably be owning him on a few fantasy rosters of my own. So another player, though, that I'm right there on the same tier, and I'm kind of splitting hairs between these two guys on which way to go because I am going to wait on tight end in the majority of my leagues, and that guy is Josh Hill. And I know a lot of people are just kind of discounting him and saying, okay, well, he hasn't really shown anything. He's got a short track record. But we all know when we talked about it last week about the targets, how they're going to go around now with the departure of Kenny Stills and Jimmy Graham. I mean, those are over 200 targets. We said it last week, and I'll say it again. And those targets have to go. They have to be distributed between Brandon Cooks and I would say Josh Hill. And I think those 2 guys are going to be the big ones. Marcus Colston, if he can stay on the field, stay healthy. I mean, those 3 guys right there are going to have to pick up the slack. And I think Josh Hill is that type of player that can surprise a lot of people, and I think the upside's there. That I think his ADP right now is the 11th round, so he's probably about right where you're going to get a guy like him or Delaney Walker or Dwayne Allen, which is another good target late. So I think those 3 tight ends are all going to be high. They're going to have that high ceiling, and you're going to be able to get those guys late, 11th round or later. So those are the type of tight ends that I'm going to be targeting, and Josh Hill probably. I think 5 touchdowns last year in limited action. I mean, you do the numbers with the targets, and I think this guy could potentially finish in the top 8, maybe even a 5th overall tight end this year. And I know that I'm being a little optimistic with him, but I just think that, Drew Brees is going to have to toss that pigskin a lot in a lot of those division games, and with the losses of big loss of Jimmy Graham's, it only makes sense that Josh Hill would be that guy.
Yeah, those are all good points. We are starting to run a little low on time here, boys. But what I do want to ask you guys, and this is a question for all of you, is there's 2 young tight ends we had on our list, Tyler Eifert and Zach Ertz. Can I get an answer from you guys on which one of the 2 you would prefer to go to, and which one, if not both, are you going to be drafting? And Ron, we'll start with you.
I would say I'm really not sold on Tyler Eifert at all, and his inability to stay on the field. To me, he presents another injury risk, so I'm going to kind of shy away from him, and it may be something that I regret later. But in quick, I would say Zach Ertz has a higher upside on a more prolific passing offense, where they're again replacing a guy like Jeremy Maclin. So there's going to be targets to go around. So I like Zach Ertz. And I like him if you can get him later. If you're paying an inflated price to get him, 5th round or 6th round or something like that, no, I'm not going to do that. But if you can get him later, I'm definitely going to take Ertz 10 times out of 10 over Tyler Eifert.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, I'm with in the Ertz camp as well. And just looking at his game logs, the one game that he had 15 receptions in Week 16 against the Redskins, just to even have that type of potential at the tight end position is just that's pretty attractive to me. Compared to Cincinnati's passing offense, I don't see there being enough balls to go around to make him a fantasy relevant option.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely with that one. Dennis, your thoughts?
Can I have a third player to choose from?
Sure, man. Go for it.
Nah, honestly, I mean, to me, they're about the same guy. It's that, high athletic guy that, is about to blow up next year, and, next year's never coming. Eifert I like better of the 2. He always looks great in camp, but, it's gym shorts and a T-shirt. We'll see if he can get over that tennis elbow or whatever he's got. But, Zach Ertz, to me, Philadelphia, we look at it as like, oh, it's this great, high, potent offense. It is, but for one guy. And that I don't think that guy's Ertz. It's either going to be a Nelson Aguilar or a, Jordan Matthews. I just don't see, Ertz making that big of a jump. And there's stumbling blocks in front of Ertz by the name of Brent Selleck. Brent Selleck's a great blocker, and he's a competent player. So as long as Selleck's there, I think that's going to cripple Ertz's upside. And like I said, Eifert's a good player, but is he going to demand more targets than A.J. Green? I don't think so. We already seen that Cincinnati's turned into more of a run-heavy team, so there's the volume. And, that's what's going to keep these guys from being the elite tight ends like Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham, because they are the number 1 option on their team. They are the number 1 receiver, as you said earlier, Lou, whereas Ertz and Eifert, they're not. They got competent, good receivers on their team. So, I would rather take a guy like Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who I think has high touchdown upside, because Jameis Winston really liked to throw to Nick O'Leary at Florida State. I think Jameis Winston's a great quarterback. I think he's the best quarterback to come out of the pipeline since Andrew Luck, and I know Ron agrees with that. So I'm all in on Jameis Winston, especially in his rookie year, man. I think he's better than McCown and, Glennon combo, and we've seen what they did. They did pretty good. So, I like Jenkins. I'm afraid Jenkins might turn into Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I should say. I don't want somebody to think I'm talking about like Malcolm Jenkins or Joe
Mike
Jenkins. Yeah,
but
I
that makes a lot of sense, Dennis. I think you're definitely onto something. Especially, I think your point about Selleck. He'll be stealing snaps for sure. We are running out of time here, guys. So I want to wrap things up, but I want to thank all of you for coming on the show today and really giving our viewership a lot to think about and a lot of information to make the informative decision moving forward. Matt, is there anything you want to add before we let you go?
Yeah, no, this is a good show. I think something we're all kind of in agreement on is quarterback strategy. I think this year, out of all years, is the year to wait. I mean, you can get we talked about the depth at the quarterback position. So I mean, if you miss out on Luck, if you miss out on Rodgers, I think I'm waiting until I'll be the 9th or 10th person to take a quarterback, and I won't feel like I'll be losing all that much production while picking up production at other positions.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Everyone has a different opinion and thought on that. So it really makes a lot of sense to kind of just do what works for you. If you're a guy that likes to wait on the quarterback, wait on the quarterback. Don't be pressured by everyone else who doesn't necessarily do that. Dennis, is there anything you wanna leave us with?
I'll just tell you guys how I approach my tight end strategy. If I can't get one of those top tier guys, then I start looking for guys in productive offenses. Ladarius Green is an interesting guy. Josh Hill is an interesting guy. These guys are in hyper productive offenses, so that's where I like to throw my darts. And I'm not going to take the New York Jets, Jason Morrow, because that's a boring offense. So if you miss out on those top tier guys, man, any Colt tight end's a good shot. I mean, they have high touchdown upside. But, I just want to thank y'all again for bringing me on. I had a good time. Once again, shout out to Corey, Mad Dog, Lou, Matt. You guys are great, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you here with us, and I hope to have you on again soon. To all you baseball fans out there, please do not forget to check out the Major League Fantasy Sports Fantasy Baseball Show, presented by Sports Palooza Radio every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also check out the rest of Sports Palooza's radio shows on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I also want to thank our other partners at White River Graphics, Real Deal Dynasty Sports, and Ron Chandler at chandlerpark.com. Be sure to check out the Major League Fantasy Sports online shop. There are great items for purchase. Ron, before we say goodbye officially here today, is there anything you want to add besides the fact that you love the show and that we are continuing to put out these episodes and we're all having a great time here? And I really do hope that everyone is using the information we're providing them to putting it to good use, because it's really important to consider everything that we do bring up on these shows.
No, just real quick, I want to say, I appreciate everybody taking the time out of their busy Saturdays and coming on the show with Lou and myself. It's a great show. We've been having a lot of fun with it, and every week we look forward to it. And we also want to make sure that you guys are going out there reading the articles that are on Major League Fantasy Sports. So definitely tomorrow, go check out Matt Barkman's latest rankings for the quarterback position, and also while you're at it today, go check out my rankings for safety. I'll be finishing up 17th through 33 on my safety rankings are out there today. So these are players that you're gonna in IDP drafts you're gonna want to know who they are, because safeties put up a lot of points, and that's the position that's important in IDP leagues. So I just want to say everybody have a great weekend, and thanks for watching, and we can't wait till next week, for the next edition of Fantasy Football Weekly.
Yeah, and again, please do go check out MajorLeagueFantasySports.com today for Ron's article and tomorrow for Matt Barkman's article, which is titled Off the Mat. Here in Major League Fantasy Sports, we do encourage our fans to submit questions throughout the week so that we can answer them for you on our show. So please feel free to email your questions to me at loulandersfootball@gmail.com. Please join us again next week on Saturday, July 25th for another edition of Major League Fantasy Football Weekly live on the Major League Fantasy Sports YouTube network. I'm Lou Landers. Take care, and we'll see you next time.